Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you are hearing from, or depending on the time that you are able to connect with this. Good afternoon. My name is Pastor Dr. Samson Ajibola, and I'm glad to welcome you to Covenant of Excellent Leadership. I'm your host, and I trust that today you'll be blessed and you will learn one or two things from what I'm about to say. So you permit me to pray as we start. Father, in the name of Jesus. Lord Father, we bless your name for yet another day, another week. We give you all the praise. Lord, as we are about to start learning, please help me to speak as your oracle in the name of Jesus. Let the word that will proceed from my mouth transform life, shift men from their comfort zone to performance and continuous improvement. In Jesus' mighty name, we have prayed. Amen. Thank you very much for making time with us. I'm sure you will not regret that you are here today. Okay, so last week and previous week we started talking about the continuous cost of improvement in leadership, and we noted that if you are ever going to be an excellent leader, okay, you need to commit to continuous improvement. Otherwise, you go to irrelevancy. So we talk about that improvement has a cost, so you can't just improve, you must be ready to pay the price. Then we talk about the pursuit of progress, okay, and we talk about the cost excuse me, we talk about the example of aircraft maintenance model, that for it is easier to procure an aircraft, but to keep it safe, comfort, and also to comply with all regulation is very, very important. That it is more expensive to do all of those things than the initial cost of purchase. And then we went ahead to look at the fact that the excellence has a depreciation factor. That excellence has depreciation factor. That if you are not taking tab to continue to improve your excellence, what you have done that is excellent today will soon lose its taste and its value tomorrow. So then we proceeded to key to investing in knowledge. Of course, we said that the key cost of excellence is knowledge, continuous learning. And we said that there are two keys: committing to lifelong learning, culture, and we talk about, of course, seeking mentorship and wisdom from experts, So we look at that. So today we'll be talking about the pursuit of progress. So in pursuit of progress today, so for you to remain relevant in your leadership endeavor, or to remain best in your field, or to keep pushing the limits, that you need to pursue progress. You need to pursue progress. Bishop Oyedepo rightly mentioned that nothing small that cannot become big. There is nothing small that cannot become big, and nothing big that cannot be bigger. So that something is small, it can be big, and if something is big, it can also be bigger. So excellence is actually manifest in continuous progress. So if you are ever going to be achieve excellent leadership status, your excellence is manifest in continuous progress. Then of course we have set time without number, that excellence is not a single time achievement. Success is not an end, but a foundation for great achievements. So in order to put this in context and to introduce this today, so I'll be taking you through some principles, like the principle of neuroplasticity, the limits of body limits, and the psychological perspective of it. And we're looking at a mastery through deliberate practice. Okay, so we'll be looking at Anders Ericsson principle, of 10K, practice, deliberate practice, and of course, if time permits us, we can get to the improvement of progress at the right pace. you know, the importance of progress at the right pace, rather, okay, that, progress should be at the right pace. And then we may look at the wisdom of measuring progress and some metrics by which or with which you can measure progress. So if time permits us. So you are welcome one again. So excellence manifests through continuous progress rather than reaching a final destination. So there is no final destination in the school of excellence. It rather manifests through continuous progress. So this perspective will shift our focus, from just trying to attain success, from just trying to attain success to, sustaining it and amplifying it. So men will not, so excellent leaders are not just trying to, excuse me, excellent leaders are not just trying to attain success, but they are trying to succeeding every day, and of course improving on whatever they have also, achieved. So those who have achieved remarkable heights must recognize that there is always another level to reach. So the point is that the level you are today is not the highest level you can. So you have potential for more. So everybody has vast potential. So excellence is never static. It's fast evolving in a fast evolving and fast changing world. So excellence is not static. It grows because human potentials are very fast. So it is largely untapped. Human potential is largely untapped. And then in order for men to explore and to express themselves, so things rapidly shift from what they are today and to another thing tomorrow. So every improvement and excuse me, let me take a deep breath. Thank you. So every individual possesses extraordinary capacity and potential. Every human being possesses extraordinary and of course capacity, for improvements. And of course this has been validated by many scientific theory, that we are able to improve, even rapidly than we ever thought, or we are able to perform more than we ever thought we could perform. So one of those principles that prove that is the principle of neuroplasticity, that our brain, the brain of human being, possess ability to adapt and grow. So our brain have adaptation feature, and it can also, of course, grow very rapidly. And so this particular principle explains how brain is able to rewire itself. Our brain is able to rewire itself, proving that learning is not limitless. Learning is unlimited, okay? As in they have said that human being, we seldom use, we use less than 10% of our brain. Remember that a brain cell is called a neuron. Okay, let me take you a little bit into anatomy of nervous system. So the brain cell is called neuron, and of course all the neurons, even though they are alive, but they are not all functional at the same time. So it depends on how much you engage your brain, how much activity, how much skill, how much things you do per time, that actually determine how much of the neurons that are actually active. So the principle is that brain is able to adapt and is able to grow, so that it explains that our brain is able to rewire itself. I think they can create more interfaces and more synapses within themselves. Okay, they can connect and more brain cells can be activated. Studies have shown that throughout life, brain form new neuronal connections. So brain is able to form new neuron connections, okay, in response to learning, in response to skills, in response to experiences. So as we continue to learn, more of our neurons are going to be activated, and more of our neurons are going to connect to themselves in order to prove that things can be possible. In fact, even let me give you an example. For example, a stroke patient who has been paralyzed and is trying to recover, moving his arms and moving his leg, more neurons are going to be activated. A different neuron is going to be activated to make sure that particular exercise or that feat or status of health is achieved. So this means that intelligence and skill are not fixed. Someone who is dull today can become brighter. Somebody who is a novice today can be more knowledgeable tomorrow. Okay, so human being can continuously refine its skills and can stretch this body or stretch the mental capacity more than it can. The other day I was reading an article written by Dr. Yonggi Cho, late Dr. David Yonggi Cho of South Korea, the great clergyman of South Korea, and he said that speech is talking about speech center, how speech center control every other nerves in the body. That he was having a tea break with one of the foremost neurosurgeons, in South Korea, and they have that discussion that the neurosurgeon was saying that they have discovered that the speech center control almost all the nerves in the body. And of course, the Bible also corroborates that. So if you tell yourself you can and you can do greater things, it means that all your nerves are also going to awake, and more neurons in your body and your brain rather are going to get alerted and ready for the new challenge that is coming your way. So your brain is actually more capable to do more than you are actually doing. So that means you can improve and you can build more capacity. So the neurons can be continuously refined and strengthened and expanded. So you can strengthen them, you can refine them, and then you can expand them. So growth is possible at any age with intentional efforts. So with intentional efforts, you can grow anything. You can grow anything. And that takes me to the next, related principle, is a principle of the body limits are often psychological, by Dr. Tim Noakes. Okay, so Tim Noakes' central governor, theory suggests that fatigue is largely a mental construct. That fatigue, tiredness, weariness is largely a mental construct, than it is physical. Meaning that we can physically endure more than we believe. So your brain tells you that no, you have to rest, you are tired. But at a point in time, if you want to break, you can break that limits, and do more. So the theory proposes that fatigue is not solely a physical phenomenon, but rather a complex interplay between physical and psychological factors. So that you are tired. Fatigue is not just that you are tired physically. There is also a mental construct. Your brain tells you are tired, and it also appears as if you are tired. So in essence, the brain can limit physical performance by creating a perception of fatigue, even if the body is still capable of performing more. So it is believed that brain do this in order to maintain, homeostasis, that is the internal integrity of the body. So it is a brain way of maintaining, the body from breaking down, But of course, we all know that if you keep living in your comfort zone, you will never be able to achieve great things in life. So brain wants to maintain a comfort, and it tells you are tired. Okay, that's what the brain does. It tells you are tired. So he said this is the brain way of preserving the body from spoiling itself. So that is why the brain acts that way. Maintaining the internal integrity, temperature, glucose level, everything, So the brain tells you are tired. So for years, human limits have been set to not to cast a stone, okay? That human can actually do more than they've done. You have seen this spring proofing by athletes, okay? As in, even so many athletes surprises their coach at competition, because they do more during competition that they have ever achieved during training. So times and times again, so we have seen this being proven wrong. Okay, so personal motivation can override all any of this. If you personally motivate yourself that I can do more. Okay, if you give yourself targets and you are pushing to achieve that target, so it can override this mental construct of limitation. So I'm telling you that you can actually do more than your brain tells you can. So you find athletes breaking record once they overcome this mental barrier of fatigue. So it's a mental barrier. Okay, your body is capable. For example, when there is an emergency, when there is an emergency, at times you don't know you can run. At times you don't know you can jump some, heights. So when there is that adrenaline surge in you, you just discover yourself doing more. So now I want to tell you that you can do more than, you can pray more than you have been praying, you can study more than you can have been studying, as in you can stay more, awake at night to study and to brainstorm on that thing than what your body is telling you. I remember when we were students, okay, at times you read continuously for 3 or 5 days without having to sleep and without good food. TDB, today break. And yes, your body will tell you you are tired, your brain will tell you you are tired, but you have to motivate yourself because you've got to pass the fucking exams. You can't afford to fail. So that is number 2. So this takes us to number 3, and then that is mastery through deliberate practices. You can master a skill through deliberate practice. So there is this theory proposed by Anders Ericsson, a Swedish psychologist, okay, who studied expertise in human development. Okay, so Anders proposed that there is a 10,000 rule. Okay, 10,000 rule of practice, 10,000 rules of practice. He proposed that experts in various domains such as music, sports, chess typically spend around 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to achieve their level of expertise. I mean deliberate practice, not casual, practices, deliberate practices. So we have seen many athletes performing at the rate they are performing at. It's like a, soccer, some athletes playing soccer. It's like a poetry, as in, it's like the level of expertise is like they are born with the ball, with a round, ball, and they do it, repeatedly, week in, week out. So it is achieved through deliberate, continuous practice. So the principle is simple. With intentional efforts and time, nearly any skill can be developed to an extraordinary level. So if you are very intentional and you are determined, okay, and you put time to it, you can develop your skills to any extraordinary level. So these insights and many more prove that we have untapped capacity, and capability of fueling our pursuit of excellence. So there are so much untapped residual capacity in us that can spur us, or that can take us to that level of excellence, if only we will be deliberate and we'll do what is need to be done. So the question is not whether we have the capacity for more, but whether we have the will, the mental will to embrace the process of achieving it. So that is the most important thing. So let's look at the importance of progress at the right pace, because it's not just about making progress, but are you making progress at the right pace? Yes, excellence is never a destination. We have said that time without number. So it's a pursuit of continuous, meaningful progress, but not all progress is equal to excellence. Not all progress is equal to excellence. You know, so its rate matter. The rate of progress matter just as much as its presence matters. So the rate at which you are making that particular progress also matters so much. You know, so of course, permit me also to quote Bishop David Oyedepo said, "Good success is a success at a good rate. Slow success is a glorious failure." You know, good success is a success at a good rate, while slow success is a glorified failure. So it is not enough to succeed. You know, the rate of success is equally very, very important. You know, it is not just that I succeeded at this. At what pace did you succeed, you know, in doing that? You know, so good success is success at a good rate. Slow success is a glorified failure. So progress alone is not efficient if it is happening at a slow rate. So when it's happening at slow rate, it's almost equal to stagnation. So true success is beyond just moving forward. It is moving at a pace that keeps momentum alive and prevents complacency. I'll go through that again, okay? So it is true success is beyond just moving forward. It is moving at a pace that keeps momentum alive and prevents complacency. A person or organization may be growing, but if the rate of growth is slow, opportunity may be lost, and of course, relevancy may fail. So if the rate of growth, is too slow, we'll lose many opportunity, and you may go into irrelevancy. So therefore, it is a wisdom for us to measure the rate at which we progress. It is wisdom in order for us to measure the rate at which we progress. I remember hearing from Bishop Oyedepo also that at the beginning of Living Faith in the early days of Winners Chapel, that he looked at it one day and he said that if this ministry should continue to grow at this pace, maybe this ministry will be members will be 1,000 when it's already 100 years old. So he needed to go to God and pray and fast with his colleagues, and even fast and pray and study church growth, vigorously, especially David Yonggi Cho, okay, who has a living testimony of fast church growth in the nation of South Korea. Then, of course, he started to act on what he has studied, and so it is good that we measure, our progress. Otherwise, if you continue to grow at a slow rate, it's never a true growth, but stagnation. So, in disguise. So, if you are growing at a very slow rate, it's actually stagnation in disguise. So, progress without the right pace is as good as standing still. So when we are progressing but at a very slow rate, so our level of change is actually unnoticeable. So rather than accepting slow growth as merit, so take strategic change, take decisive action, and a result speak for itself. So that's what Bishop Oyedepo did in those days, early days of Winners Chapel. So the ability to measure progress determines the ability to improve. So when we are able to measure the progress, it will also give us the capacity or ability to be able to improve that progress. So without clear metrics, one can mistaken movements for meaningful advancements. Wow. There's movement, but there's no meaningful advancement. So excellence requires the wisdom to define, track, and adjust growth strategy in order to maintain momentum. So excellence requires the wisdom to define, track, and adjust growth strategy to maintain momentum. So meaningful progress with meaningful metric. So there are 4 ways I've identified here, okay, in a way to measure our progress. in order to measure our progress. So 4 metrics: benchmark against clear standard. Okay, benchmark against clear standard. In the industry which you operate has clear standard. They have standard with which they measure excellence and performance. So progress is only meaningful when measured against defined standard. So one should ask, what good progress look like in my field? In this field, if you are in ministry, what does good progress look like? In your field of endeavor, what does good progress look like? Is it in terms of income? Is it in terms of a numerical number? How many goods are sold per day, or how many goods are produced? So by comparing current achievement with industry benchmark, past performances, or expert recommendation, it becomes easier to determine whether growth is truly happening or it is just movement without direction. So that is number one. Every industry has a standard growth benchmark. So know them and benchmark your movement and your progress against those benchmark. Is very, very important. Number two, measure the rate of growth over time. Haven't got the benchmark. Growth rate should be measured per time, per a given time. So growth should be consistent and upward moving, and not stagnant or in a decline. So, and a slow improvement rate can sometimes be problematic and not progress at all. So when progress is slow over a given point of time, you will quickly know what to do, and you'll be able to tweak and change one or two things, otherwise. So for example, we had no better yesterday. So it is expected that the output today must supersede, yesterday by significant margin. So if you sit down and you think you have seen that you performed better last month than you are performing this month, then you should know what to do. But when you don't benchmark your growth over your improvement over a time, okay, so you will not know what to do. And this is the reason why that are behind, annual, quarterly performance review, monthly performance review, annual performance review that, organization, carried out from time to time, So it is expected that the output today should supersede, of course, yesterday by significant margin. So understanding the speed of progress is just as important as making progress itself. So when you understand the speed of progress, of course, speed is measured per time. So number three is stress your efforts. Stress your efforts. Am I pushing my limits, or am I just moving in my comfort zone? Ask yourself that question. That is how to put your effort into stress test. Okay, am I moving, pushing my limits, or have I created some limits, mental constructs again, or am I pushing, beyond the limits? So true growth often involves discomfort and challenge. So if you find out that you are always receding and you comply with your brain, anytime you say stop and you just stop, then you might just be moving not at a good pace. So it's sometimes if someone lifts the same weight, for example, the same kg of weight at a gym, for more than a month, is not progressing. For example, if you are running 100 meter at 10 minutes every day, you are not progressing. So if you are lifting 50 kg weight in a gym every day for a month, you are not progressing. You are only maintaining your body. But by the time you move from 50 to 55, today you have lifted 50 consistently for maybe 3 days or for 4 days. Then you now said, let me move to 60 kg. Then you begin to lift 60 kg. That is what you are testing your efforts. Okay, so excellence demands continuous stretching of capacity. Excellence demands continuous stretching of what? Capacity, not just repeating comfortable routines. So that is how to improve and how to make progress in life, is what? Stretching your capacity, stretching your limit, pushing the limit continuously. You have done 1 today. Tomorrow try and do 1.5 or try and do 1.2 and keep pushing that limit. Keep pushing that limit per day, per time. Okay, that is how to maintain excellence and to stay ahead. And that is how to bring out the color in leadership. Then number four, seek external feedback and accountability. Seek external feedback and accountability. This may require you to actually ask mentor to assess you, faithful friends or advisors to assess you, to tell you how you are doing. You just gauging yourself from internal, and this may require you having, an external person to come and review, your performances and your successes, to see how you are doing. So sometimes an outsider perspective is necessary to gauge one real progress. If you keep assessing yourself and then you keep saying, okay, I'm doing well, you might actually, not be able to have a right perspective, of yourself. So mentor, coaches, and trusted advisors can offer objective feedback that help rejig our efforts. They will help us to rejig our efforts, refocus our direction, rechannel our resources as well. And of course, probably change our speed. And of course, our output now becomes better, faster, and of course, more cost effective and safer. So to rejig our effort and correct costs when necessary, so that we will know how to cut our costs and to do it faster. So a fresh set of eye can reveal, blind spots. So at times it happens when you write an article or you have written you think you have written very brilliantly, and you give it to somebody to review, they will see even spelling mistake, grammatical errors. They will tell you, okay, you'll have presented this one in a better way, this one will have been better, will have been this. Okay, so having a second opinion, another eye to look at it, is also very, very important. So a fresh set of eye can reveal blind spots, offer valuable insights, and ensure that progress is real than deceptive. Progress is real, is measurable, and aligned with the goal of what? Excellence. So these are very, very important. Metrics that where you can design a metric, benchmark against clear standard, industry standard in your industry. In ministry, you look at it. What is the standard, of growth? Okay, then measure the rate of growth per time. Don't just measure growth. Okay, what is the rate of growth per time? Stress your efforts. Okay, am I just pushing my am I pushing my limits, or I'm just moving within my comfort zone? Okay, so we should be ready to push a little bit. Okay, I just gave example of somebody who is doing a lifting the same kg of weight every day. So that is what's sitting at the comfort zone. Lifting is the same weight for months, for years. Okay, you need to at least add 1 more kg, 2 or kg to it. Okay, then of course seek external feedback. Okay, so these are met, the way we can, actually, measure our growth. So in conclusion, in concluding on continuous improvement as it is, and engender, excellence, so in conclusion, so let's state that Bishop Ajibola said something. He said, not all success stories can be called good successes. Most are poor success due to slow delivery. So success story that's delivered slowly, is not a good success. So the rate at which we deliver also matters most. How quick are you able to turn around and put that thing, outside there? Is very, very important. Okay, it's very, very, very important. So it becomes important to maintain momentum to drive progress. So you need to maintain momentum to drive progress. So if you are moving, for example, now at 20 kilometers per hour to be able to achieve, 1 ton, then that means if you push a little bit, increase your speed a little bit to 30 kilometers per hour, you should be able to achieve 2 tons. So pushing every day, pushing our body, pushing ourselves, actually shows that, I've said that, good enough is actually the value of mediocrity. So when you tell yourself, oh, this is good enough, this is good enough, this is good enough, okay, then you are becoming a mediocre. Okay, so it becomes important to maintain momentum to drive progress. So when we reframe excellence as progress rather than perfection or a destination. So when we begin to see excellence as continuous progressive endeavor, pushing the limits on day by day, I remember I have taught us a principle also in this class, the principle of 1% daily improvements. So when we commit to continuous daily improvements, then that is when we begin to make the best, of our leadership endeavor. Then that give us, make us to become excellent. So when we reframe excellence as progress rather than perfection, we create a different approach to our leadership impact. So we need to reframe, excellence from just being success, perfection, just achieving outstanding results, but towards continuous progress and maintaining it and amplifying it. It's a different thing to maintain a successful status. It's a different thing to take it to the next level. Then, so when we begin to, look at excellence from that particular perspective, it means that our leadership approach, we have a different, a different impact. So we'll be able to make more impact than we ever made. And I've said time without number, even in this class, that the essence of life is all about impacts you make. So the impact we make, okay, is very, very important. So it is not just good enough that, I'm succeeding. At what rate are you succeeding? Then do you keep succeeding? So this is the point I want to make, and then this is the point I'm bringing us today, that we need to create a different approach to our leadership, and the best way to look at it is to what? Reframe excellence as progress rather than what? Destination or perfection or just a success point. So keep pushing the limits, keep pushing the limits, keep pushing the limits, so, and don't box anything. Don't box anything. So if you allow me to recap again, okay, So we've mentioned today that you know, for you to be able to achieve, excellence, you need to commit to what? Pursue progress. You need to commit to what? The pursuit of what? Progress. And we said that is the way excellence is manifest, through continuous progress rather than reaching a final destination. Then I mentioned that some of these principles I've explained that you can do more. The principle of neuroplasticity, I'd explained that your brain is capable of more than you are currently using it for. Okay? As in, you can learn more thing and more thing and more thing and more thing. Then we talk about the body limits are often psychological. Dr. Tim Knox, central governance theory, suggests that fatigue is not just a physical construct, but mental construct and a psychological, and it is the brain's way of telling you to maintain your body and to protect your body. But we have athletes and many people have proved that to be wrong. That if you can just overcome that mental barrier and you push more, then you can break record and of course emerge as excellent. Then we look at the principle of mastery through deliberate practices, and we look at Anders Ericsson, the Swedish, psychology who study human expertise, who talk about the 10K hours rule of practice. He proposed that in the field of music, sports, chess, and some of this activity, that you have to rehearse and practice like 10,000 and you become an expert at it. Of course, we talk about the importance of progress at the right pace, and that was what made us to look at. It is wisdom for you to measure progress, and we said that number one thing to measure progress is to benchmark against clear standard. Number two is to measure the rate of progress over time, and number three is to stress test your efforts. Stress test your efforts, and number four is to seek external feedback from good friends, from advisors, mentors, and coaches. So at this point that I want to draw the curtain today. So we'll continue again next week. We're taking this bit by bit, per time, so that we can learn effectively. So whatever you have learned today, I will encourage you to find a way it applies to your field. And if you are struggling, you can consult me. You can actually reach out to me, on my phone number through WhatsApp on 08069228477. I take that again, 08069228477. Then I will be able to look at if it can help you to see how you can maintain progress in your field of endeavor, and how you can calibrate, a new approach to your leadership impact. So till we come your way again next week, remain blessed and remain excellent in all that you are doing. Thank you.